right, Tim, that was great. That was quick and easy.
Quick and easy.
That was nice. Thank you. Tim's last message was a great segue into what we're talking about. As Jason said, I've been around for a long time, and it's clear that when you watch Oak Park play or walk into a gym or a field, they're trying to do the right things for the right reasons. Do the right things. It's the right thing to do. And a lot of times I'll come into places and it's like traffic school, right? I've got to, replace a lot of bad habits with good habits. And it's nice to be able to come into a place where we're looking for ways to get just a little bit better. I have known Coach Davis, Dr. Davis, back when he was Coach Davis. And so I'm really, really happy to be here. And we're going to go through some things about our program. We're going to follow up with Tim's mission statement concept and have you take home a little homework and come up with one of your own if you don't have one already. But we'll talk about that as we go. Having been around a long time, I love the word coach, right? I love walking down halls and having people say, "Hi, coach," or into restaurants. And then all of a sudden, everybody was a coach. The life coaches and business coaches, and I got bitter for a while. And then my daughter shared a story with me just about the origin of the word coach. And basically it comes from, horse-drawn carriages back in Europe that took really important people from where they were to where they wanted to go. And I guess that means anybody that does that is a coach. So I kind of got over my bitterness a little bit and accepted it. So I wanted to spend just a minute or two having you talk about some coaches that were influential to you, right? And just some reasons. Just a couple of people. And give me somebody that was influential in your decision to decide to become a coach.
I'll start.
Yeah, okay.
My first, my football coach here at Oak Park, JV, who's also PE coach, Fred Umano, just the way he coached, just his demeanor, just his all around.
Describe his demeanor for us.
What's that?
Describe his demeanor for us. Give me a few adjectives.
Confident, calm, supportive, nurturing, but held you accountable.
Last part too. That's great. Yeah. A couple more?
Dave Kimber, who teaches right over here.
Mm-hmm.
He's my coach. A few words for him: empathetic.
Empathetic.
Strong male role model for a bunch of us that didn't have that in our lives. So having that, for me, being a coach is more being a mentor and just being there and being supportive no matter what. That's what he was.
Good. One more. Yeah. Go. Let's get two more now.
When I was younger, I still played soccer, and I had a coach that had a really good balance between knowing when to push you and kind of get your face, and knowing when he could push you and when to be more supportive and being like, hey, you got more gentle, I guess. So finding that balance between push and pull. Yeah.
Great.
When I was younger, I was playing lacrosse at a relatively high level, and we one year had a coach who was a parent. He wasn't a lacrosse person, and I think I was kind of a little nervous, a little worried about it. And he was one of the better coaches I ever had because he had a lot of leadership ability. He always tried to do the right thing. So his X's and O's weren't necessarily as strong as someone else may have been, but he was just such a good, positive personality, and it always stuck with me that anyone with the right attitude could be a good coach, even if they don't have as much knowledge as someone else.
Especially at that level, right? I mean, we start in youth sports, and everybody has Coach Dad or Coach Mom that's coaching just because they need someone to do so. And then eventually we get to the point where we get somebody that is a little bit tougher, a little bit better with the X's and O's, holds you a little bit more accountable. But if those other guys don't maintain your love for the game, you don't stick around long enough to find those other guys, right? I was 3 or 4 years ago walking through a store Christmas time, and I saw my 16-year-old Colt League baseball coach from Covina. And I don't know what compelled me to go lock to him. And then it was like the point of no return. We made eye contact, so I was committed. So we had to have a conversation. And clearly he looked exactly like he looked, 30 years earlier, 40 years earlier. And he had no idea who this crazy guy was coming to him. But we had a great conversation about, me going into coaching and what I do now. And I realized during that conversation that he was the first guy that did some of those things, right? He was a real coach. He came up with a practice plan. He knew his skills, had a way to, toughen you up a little bit and soften you up when you needed to. And at the time, I wasn't sure I liked him so much, and I wasn't sure he liked me, right? Especially when it got to that accountability part. But then when you get older, you notice that a little bit. So we all got in it for a particular reason. And I think Tim mentioned culture. As you start to talk about culture and building it, understanding the reason why you're in it is important. There's a book, I love this guy, Simon Sinek. He's got a bunch of books, he does a bunch of TED Talks, and he really speaks to me in a way that I understand. I think that's important when you find books to read or things to watch, is to find somebody that resonates with you and speaks to you in a way that you understand. Otherwise, you just kind of mimic somebody else's agenda, right? So you want to figure out, what is really inside you. And Simon does that a little bit with me. But he had this book, Start With Why. And it made sense to me that that really is what we all need to do, is we need to figure out why it is that we're doing it. His theory is that everybody knows what they do. Businesses, sports teams, or whatever. You know what you're doing. The better ones know how to do it really well. But the ones that really are able to be successful are the ones that know why they do it. Because people buy into you because of why you do what you do and what you believe in more than what you're doing and how you're doing, right? So we're going to spend some time in a little bit just kind of figuring out what your why is. And when we talk to parents and athletes, we go through an exercise similar. Because it's going to be hard for you to coach athletes unless you know why they're in it as well. Right? So hopefully we all get on the same page. That's really what this is all about. When we're doing that, there are some words that get mixed up. And I think you look at things like vision and philosophy and missions and mottos, and they're a little bit different, right? Vision is what you're looking at as long term, right? Your best possible result. Where your mission is how it's going to get there, and then your motto is just that back of your t-shirt, right? What you say to your kids all of the time, right? We'll come up with some of those things. But in developing this philosophy, I'm going to just leave you with some homework, and I think it's a good exercise. And I'll give it to you as we go. Kind of got to figure out the things that are important to you, and then work on it from there. So we talk a lot about standards. What are some things that are really, really important to you, whether it's being on time, sportsmanship, grades, working hard, best effort, whatever the case may be. You come up with 3 or 5 of those things. And don't do it now, right? Take it home so you can spend some time doing it. Got a little thing, when you retire, right? What do you want people to say about you, right? What's your legacy going to be? What are you going to leave behind? Kind of the things that we just talked about when you were talking about your mentors and the reasons why you got into it. And then a couple of, key terms and phrases that might lead to your philosophy, right? Tim's mission statement had some key phrases in there, right? And then once you develop that paragraph that has your philosophy, kind of come down with a 1 or 2 sentence mission statement that's a little bit quicker, right? That everybody can understand. Because if your mission statement isn't something that everybody can repeat, it's not going to be very valuable, right? So try to siphon that down to something that's a little bit easier. I had a similar exercise when I was in college. And I was going through an old crate in the garage, and I found the spiral notebook that I wrote this paper in. And anyway, the conclusion of the paper, it was in a coaching theory class, was if you convince your player, and I was 19, if you convince your players that you care about them as a person, you're knowledgeable and organized, and you work as hard as you expect them to, then they will show a desire to play well, listen and try to understand, and try to be the best teammate they can be. Right? So that's what I wrote when I was 19. And then you start to get all this stuff, right? You get all of the skills and the drills and the packets, and you eventually end up with a 3-ring binder of how you're going to cover first and third situations and what your strategies are on offense and your attack, and you get lost in that stuff as you go through the season. So we're having a pretty good season. I was at Bishop Amat, and it was a mid-season practice. We were feeling pretty good about ourselves, and I just went into one of those mid-practice rants that you do sometimes. And, you guys you're not even trying. You just stink out there. You're acting like you don't even care. There's a lot rantier than that. Then ended up back in the office afterwards and slumped in my chair and realized that, those were the things that I talked about 30, 40 years earlier. It's important that you care, that you think, and you try. And I forgot about what was important to me, and I was worried about stuff. All right, so we kind of, dialed a lot of stuff back and really talked about those 3 words, right? Care, think, and try. And when we did, it brought a little bit of clarity to the kids, right? And then it was very easy for me to call them on something, right? Was that your best effort? Right? It wasn't personal. I just wanted to find out if it was your best effort. Or, are you thinking about what our game plan is? Or is that how we were supposed to execute that attack or that play? So anyway, by coming back to something simple, it enabled us to get where we wanted to go, right? They got lost in some of the minutia along with me. So that's what I encourage you to do. Come up with your philosophy, but then siphon something down into something manageable for kids that will help you, move forward a little bit with what it is that you're trying to do. Tim mentioned parents a little bit. Tell me if this looks familiar. So we get those, right? And we can't say what we want to say. But we both want the same things, right? We both want their kids to play great. And we just have to worry about, 12, 15, 20 kids instead of just their one individual one. So the important thing is that we all get on the same page and understand what our roles and what our goals are. In order to do that, you've got to have this collaboration that we talked about. You've got to work together, and you have to allow them to understand that they have an important job too. And so let's talk about that important job. First thing that I said that we'll try to do is we'll try to figure out why their kids are playing. And do the same thing with the athletes. And sometimes parents and athletes aren't on the same page with each other either. So that's a conversation that they need to have between each other. But there's a lot of different reasons why kids might want to play. We need to understand those. And mom needs to understand, what their kids' goals are as well. So we will go through that, and I just wanted to lay that out because we'll go through that with the parents. But as far as you're concerned, I think you guys do two different things, two basic things. Right? You teach kids to compete, and you help build some character. Right? If you believe that your value, your program is valuable, you want to keep them in it as long as possible. So you also got to make it a little bit fun. Right? So besides all those other things, it has to be enjoyable as well. But let's focus on that competition and character. And clearly when we're talking about competing, we're talking about striving to win, right? We want to try to do that. These are your two things. The winning part, the competition, that's the most obvious part of it. But the other thing is the most important. Now, what are some things that you're going to do as a coach to get your team ready to compete? The obvious stuff. Don't overthink it.
Practice.
Yeah, practice. What else? What do you practice? You condition. Right? What else do you practice?
Set plays.
Plays, strategies, skills, fundamentals, right? How about on game day? What do you do? Game planning, get them ready, got to decide who's going to start, got to substitute, right? All of those things are your job. That's the competition part of it. Those are non-negotiables. Those are not things that the parents should have conversations about, right? These things are up to you. Now, when they're done with playing for you at the end of their career at Oak Park, what are some life skills, some character traits that you want them to have absorbed? Timeliness, okay. Communication. Perseverance. Grit, toughness. Integrity. Accountability. Work ethic. Could go on and on, right? So, all sorts of things. Now, is there a time when developing those things on the character side clashes with your ability to try to win and compete? Give me an example.
When the best player on your team is late and they don't play because they know they're the best player.
Yeah. Violating a rule of some sort, right? Whether it's tardiness or whatever. Yeah.
In lacrosse, sometimes you'll get, depending on where you're playing and how good the refs are, they won't call face-offs properly. And if you cheat, you're going to win. And we have made it a policy that we never cheat to win.
We're just not going to play it. That's not the way we do things here.
That's correct. That's not the Oak Park way.
I like that. Not the Oak Park way. Yeah. Right, so there's a lot of times. And those things are difficult times, right? Because you have to have a difficult conversation, right? Who do you have to have that conversation with first?
Yourself.
Yourself to make that decision, right? Then the player, right? And depending on how that goes, who's the conversation with next? The parents. And if that doesn't go well, Tim, administration, whoever, right? So a lot of people, like your lower level coaches sometimes, right? Younger coaches are just getting into it, they might run away from those moments, right? And because they don't want to have that difficult conversation. But those are great moments that they should run for because those are teachable moments, right? That's when kids grow, either as an athlete or as a person. So those teachable moments are important because they're the ones that help build character and get them to be better competitors. Everybody believes this, right? When you survey parents, when you survey athletes, those character traits are more important than the skills and the practice. And if I'm the worst coach in the world, right? I'm that, Coach Dad, and I'm able to develop these soft skills in my players. Are you guys going to be pretty good? If you just have those things on the right, you'll be okay, right? You'll be able to overcome some of the stuff on the left if you have a good work ethic and commitment and teamwork and all of those things. But those lessons don't get taught unless the parents cooperate, right? If you are trying to have this collaboration between the two of them, and you're trying to get a kid to be on time, and parents don't care to get them there on time, right? And then try to make excuses for them and don't hold them accountable. Those lessons go by the wayside, right? It's hard to teach sportsmanship when moms and dads are screaming from the sidelines, or hard to teach accountability if they're making excuses for them, using the umpires or other players' mistakes or coaches' decisions or whatever, right? So we need the parents to help build those lessons. They need to collaborate with us and cooperate with us. Otherwise, those lessons on the right never get taught. And those are more important than trying to win at a higher level than some of this stuff, all things being equal. So I would say that the parent's job, might be more important if you get them to focus on just those things, right? If you can convince parents that helping build your son's character, work ethic, commitment, teamwork, is going to help us compete better. It's going to help your kid compete better, and it's going to help us win more. And that higher the stakes, the higher the reward, the more character gets built, and it kind of goes back and forth. I think that collaboration is what's important in trying to make your program as good as you can be. But a lot of times when you sit down as a coach and you say, what they hear is stay out of my business. Right? When you talk about this, they think you're telling them to hands off, and that's not really the case. Right? The case is we want to work together. Right? We want to make sure that we collaborate to help build those character traits so that we can compete better. Right? So let's talk about the competition part of it for a little bit. Qualities, traits, skills. Somebody mentioned resilience. Was that the word that you used? Right? The perseverance. Right? I use these three words: toughness, resilience, and grit. Right? Toughness is the ability to focus on one thing that helps right now. Right? Whatever I need to do at this moment, what my job is right this moment. Resilience is being able to bounce back immediately if that doesn't go well. Okay? And grit is the stick-to-itiveness over time that helps you, improve as the season goes on. Right? So those three things we can develop if we embrace that struggle a little bit. You all know this.
This is what's great about sports. This is what the greatest thing about sports is. You play to win the game. Hello? You play to win the game. You don't play to just play it. That's the great thing about sports. You play to win. And I don't care if you don't have any wins. You go play to win. When you start telling me it doesn't matter, then retire. Get out. Because it matters.
So I think what happens a lot of times is that people play the first few seconds of that clip. And all you hear is you play to win the game. And the win at all cost people use that as justification for whatever it is that they're going to do. Right? But the last part of the clip is more important. Even if you haven't won a game all year, right? Even if you're not having any success, it's important that you go out and try to win the game, right? Try to compete at your best level. And that part of it is what makes everybody get a little bit better, right? If you're just talking about winning, and half the teams, are going to go home unhappy because they're going to win. Well, I guess in some sports you're going to tie, right? But, you get where I'm going. So we want to go ahead and approach that. I think that a couple of things that have made it easier for me, right, is this whole growth mindset trend. Everybody talking about the growth mindset. Pretty simple is this little diagram. It's really driven by belief, right? You've got to build some belief in your kids that what you're asking them to do, the action that you want them to take, is going to make a difference. Then when it does, right, that's going to fuel some of that growth that's going to inspire more belief, and that cycle just continues. So I would suggest, and again, this is really kind of, you're the vehicle to get this message to some of your lower level coaches. I would suggest that you, anytime you're going to praise a kid, try to link his success with the work that they've done in order to get that success. And if you add that one simple sentence to your conversation, it changes mindsets completely, right? Instead of that kid just thinking he's great and he's always been great, now when I struggle, I think maybe I'm not that great, and they kind of plateau. They're afraid to fail. Where if you link their success to the work that they put in, now all of a sudden when things don't go well and they're struggling, they're in a slump, okay, well, I know if I work a little bit harder, I'm going to get out of that, right? So being able to link that success to, or that achievement to their work, kind of creates that belief that we're talking about. Creates two different kind of people: results-oriented people, or people that are interested in their personal best and their best effort, and are able to move on to the next play, which is most important. You're going to get what you, not what you emphasize. You're going to get what you recognize and reward. Okay? And the reward doesn't have to be a reward, right? Just recognition of some sort. And you see a lot now with the turnover chains and the belts and the swag chains in baseball and all sorts of different stuff. And I still think the best thing is, out of Pujols' hut. Right? It doesn't matter what the acknowledgement is, right? But some sort of a reward to go with that recognition is kind of what matters. So think about what you do, what you can do to make things a little bit more inspiring for kids to achieve. And that helps create this confidence. Remember this cycle that we're talking about, the belief. That helps create this belief because it fills kids' emotional tanks, right? Or your emotional bank account. People use all sorts of different phrases. If my emotional bank account is empty, right? I'm less coachable, I'm less confident, I don't compete with as much character. But if my emotional bank account is full, right, now all of a sudden I'm tough and resilient and all of those other things that we just talked about. Just about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I picked up this interview. Guy from the Green Bay Packers who described it perfectly.
I think the best way to describe this is everyone has an emotional bank account with people. Hopefully yours is, quote unquote, has a lot of money. Like, I look at my emotional bank account with a lot of guys in this locker room. There's been a lot of deposits. And unfortunately, you guys don't get to see the deposits. And sometimes they're daily, sometimes they're weekly, sometimes it's one big one every 2 or 3 months. But most of the time, y'all see the withdrawals, which is okay. Because if you have somebody who's making deposits, whether it's, big, small, incremental, or whatever, when they make the withdrawal, there's, emotional credit to give out. So that's how I feel anytime he says or does anything. And, that's how I feel with a lot of my teammates is I get what you're saying. It doesn't matter how it comes out because I know you as a person and I trust you as a person. So whatever you need to say to get out of me the correction or, whatever happens in that moment, how it's communicated, that's okay with me because of prior deposits they've put into our friendship.
I think you all kind of mentioned something like that, right? About, being able to, be tough and hold you accountable, but at the same time, be soft when you needed to. And that's really what we're talking about. I think his phrase, emotional credit, was what was great, because we're trying to get to this balance of 5 times as many positive memories as criticisms and corrections, okay? And I've had people go with a double, pitch count at practice and just count positives, negatives. And it's research proven in a lot of different areas, but it works. And I would say that anybody that thinks that it doesn't work as a coach, all you really need to do is you need to try to relentlessly reward desired effort. Right? Anytime they're going to try to do what you're asking them to do, recognize it. Right? And if you do that every time, you're going to have as many as you want. And it's not just on you. It's on everybody. Everybody counts. Teammates, parents. So on days when it's tough, right? There's going to be days when there's a lot of errors and strikeouts and you lose. Nothing the parent can do about that now. So what they need to do is make up for it. Instead, what's their instinct? Yeah, pile on, right? Do post-game analysis and make it worse, right? So what we want them to do is to understand that we're talking about this 5-to-1 balance overall. So if I'm sitting on the other side of the chain link fence and I'm watching a tough game, I need to be thinking, okay, now what can I do to help balance that, right? Maybe it's through the way that I cheer, maybe it's on the drive home, right? Or something that all the kids do afterwards. The other thing is when I would talk to athletes, they outnumber you guys by a lot, right? So if there's a lot of corrections, right? Your 20 kids can pick each other up and fill each other's emotional bank account that when you get on them or make a correction, it's not as bad because their emotional bank account's already filled by their teammates. Does that make sense? All right, so y'all got to pitch in to make that work. Talk about some different things with the parents, but 2 things that I think you guys can do. I like to have partners, call them battle buddies. Okay? Maybe you 2 guys are playing catch, warming up, you're stretching together, whatever. It's your job to praise her all practice long. Anytime she does something well, right? Relentlessly. And it's your job to do the same thing for him. You're not allowed to correct each other or anything. That's my job, right? So all practice long, you're getting praise. You're filling each other's bank account. So when I make a correction, it's not such a big deal, right? Maybe you don't get along with him so well. I'm going to pair you up, right? So now you've got to praise him during practice, vice versa. Okay? So another tip. But the biggest thing is being able to recover from the last play. We'll skip Aaron Judge and his recovery routine. Ken Ravizza. Anybody familiar with Ken Ravizza? Heads Up Baseball. Read that book. It's a great one. He was a sports psychologist, passed away a couple of years, but he was at Cal State Fullerton. But he was kind of like the father of or grandfather, I guess, of the flush. Anybody ever heard of flushing mistakes? A lot of teams have bought into it. Tampa Bay Rays, Chicago Cubs. He's kind of a big Joe Madden guy. LSU baseball, right? You make a mistake, they talk about flushing the mistake. And they put Ken Ravizza, he put a toy toilet into the dugout. And every time somebody made a mistake, he put it in his bag, he put a penny in it. It would make a flushing sound, and everybody in the dugout would say, next pitch, right? Just a mental way to flush out a mistake. Doesn't have to be a toilet. I had a player that couldn't get over mistakes, and I told him he needed a plunger, right? Because sometimes they build up a little bit. Rutgers football talks about keep chopping wood. So they talk about chopping wood all the time, right? Just keep chopping wood. But it doesn't matter what it is. You can throw it away, next play, next pitch, flush it. You could be like Ted Lasso and say, have a memory like a goldfish. Right? You got to forget that last play and move on to the next one. And again, parents need to help get that done. Now, the big thing that's obvious, especially to a place like Oak Park, is that those character traits that we're talking about. So if you're working hard to building, whatever character traits you put in your mission statement, I like leadership, optimism, knowledge, attitude, and respect. That's going to help you compete, right? So make sure the parents understand that part of it. Something that I stress with the parents is that 95% of Fortune 500 executives say they played sports. 90% of women. 54% of Fortune 500 women executives played sports in college. And so the lessons that are taught here, right, take you where you want to go, right? And that's really what we were talking about at the very beginning, right? Taking people from where they want to go, where they are, to where they want to go. Mandela. He was getting an award, World Sports Award. And the sentence that just sticks out in my mind is that sports speaks to kids in a language they understand. Right? I mean, we could fill the gym and give them a lecture and talk about, all the lessons, but throw them a ball and make them compete, and a lot of those lessons are going to get through osmosis, right? My daughter, on the right, played at University of Redlands, went and got her doctorate in zoo specific. She's Dr. Thomas now. On graduation day, how'd you do that, right? You're my kid. How did you make it through, the tough times in the labs and the 12-hour days and all that stuff? And she said, Daddy, I wouldn't have made it if it wasn't for shooting slumps and losing streaks. Right? The tough stuff that parents try to hide their kids from is the stuff that really is what can make them successful in the long run. Right? So parents don't get that because they want to protect their kids. Right? Let them struggle and then help them get up. And that's their job. And it's your job to make sure that they embrace it and work hard to get better the next day. And I think that that's something you guys are really trying to do hard here. Right? When we talk to the parents, we'll put together a standard thing, but I like to tailor it a little bit to you guys. Right? So give me some of the things that you have concerns about or issues with that we haven't talked about, or some of the things that are most important to you to get across to parents. Yeah.
I guess communication through your kid, having them come to me first versus you texting me, calling me, emailing me, and I emphasize that in the kids as well. Like, come to me first. Like, I am someone you can trust, and I'd rather hear it from you than your parents.
Yeah.
Because it's gonna end up being a conversation between us anyway.
For sure. Yep. No, that's great. My daughter played volleyball at Western Christian, and they were pretty good. They ended up winning the CIF championship in 1 year, and then her senior year they weren't as good. And I remember there was a few plays that I didn't like how the coach communicated, whatever, and I was like, I'm going to go talk to her. And then I remember, I'm not during the game, right? On game day, don't talk to them on a game day. Make an appointment, whatever. So then I look at the schedule. The next day there was a game. It's volleyball, right? It was all about the game. And so didn't talk to her at all. And by the third day, my daughter was over. It was no big deal, right? So, have them do it first is the great, method of communication. And it teaches them lessons too, right? There's not a better lesson than to learn to speak to a figure of authority about something you disagree with, right? Whether it's a teacher, boss, coach, or whatever. Great.
Coaching from the sideline.
Coaching from the sideline?
Like, and in a literal way, like when they're yelling from the sidelines,
Yeah.
but also coaching on the way home, on the way to the game, on
So
the way
both.
home from the game.
Yeah.
I see a lot of evidence of that.
Yeah, postgame, we'll definitely spend time on the postgame conversation, and, I see now especially, the coaching from the stands, and hollering instructions to kids is a tough one. How do you know that, you're supposed to shoot when you're passing, or you're not supposed to take that pitch? Coach gave me the take sign, why you yelling? Yeah, good. Anything else? And we'll just hammer this stuff home a little bit with them. But I think the biggest thing is to try to get them on the same page with you, to try to collaborate. What our roles are, what their roles are. Do we see those roles blend a little bit here? Do they cross the line a little bit? Yeah.
One thing that stuck out to me that when we had a meeting with you initially is, all the complaints we get. Like, if you ask a parent, why do you want your kids playing sports? And then you look at the complaints we get, it's never why they want their kids playing sports. So I think when you said that really stuck to me. So I think talking about like, hey, you're probably gonna not be happy with your kids' playing time, but why do you want your kids playing sports?
For sure. And that's the good thing about having that, questionnaire at the beginning. Why are your kids playing sports? Because you're right, they're not going to say, be a superstar, playing time, win a championship, or anything. They're going to say all of the things that we talk about. life lessons in sportsmanship and dealing with defeat, right? Those are the things that they're going to say. So being able to turn around and have a conversation with them later and say, well, remember on that meeting when you said, this is what you wanted? Yeah, right? Because the conversations are about something completely different than what their goals are. Yeah, good, for sure. Awesome. Like I said at the very beginning, I like coming to schools that are, really good and trying to figure out a way just to be an ounce better every day. It's much more fun than traffic school. I would encourage you to go home and take a look at that philosophy page, right? And just play with it and see what you come up with. But I have my information there, right? If you send me an email or hit me on Twitter or something, Instagram at Coach Loeb, share something from from the workshop in some manner. I'll be able to send you some other stuff that will be able to be used with your parents as well. All right? Awesome. Thank you guys very much. Tim, thank you for having us out here.
Thank you.
Very good.
Yep, absolutely.
So,
I think the parent things would be good.
Yeah.
yeah. So coaches, we're going to be doing, Ray's going to be spending some time talking with our parents as well. So we'll kind of do that third step. But I know today was a little bit longer, but I really appreciate you guys being here. And yeah, let's have a great spring season. Looking forward to it.
Thank you guys.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
for sure. Good luck to you.
I'm so pumped.
Let's play.
Let's play.